the day of his ordination, a man's life changes forever. Yes, he is still himself, but something radical has changed inside of him. He no longer lives for himself, but has literally laid down his life for others. To preach the gospel, to care for the poor, to forgive sins, to be an instrument of Christ in the world. It's such a mission, such a call, is so overwhelming. It's easy to wonder, how can you really be sure? Every priest you ask will tell you a different story. No two men are alike, and it's the same in the priesthood. They come from different backgrounds. They have different personalities, different families, different experiences. Their stories are unique. But it's the same Christ who calls each one. And the more stories you hear, the more you recognize a common pattern. It's very rare to hear the voice in the cloud experience. Yes, there were hints. Yes, there were moments in prayer. But more often than not, the call is heard in the ordinary events of human life. It's heard spending time with friends, in studies, in guidance from a wise priest, in the everyday conversation with God in prayer, and the subtle, growing conviction that God is calling you to something great. Discerning your vocation is much less like solving a math problem and much more like falling in love. Like any love, there are reasons, and the reasons matter, but there is always something that goes beyond the equation. A vocation is not something to be solved as much as it is something to be lived, and that's exactly what seminary life is all about. The formation in the seminary is intentionally tailored to cooperate with God's work in the soul. By giving yourself over to the process of formation, by being challenged, trained, and stretched for 7 to 10 years, you are slowly transformed more and more into the man God created you to be. It's not always an easy process. At times it's difficult. It requires you to reach deep within yourself and even beyond into places where only God can sustain you. But in that place, God is molding your heart more and more into a living image of himself, and he builds you back up. He breathes new life into you. Throughout this process, your friends support and encourage you. Your classes train and sharpen your mind. Incredible priests walk alongside you, and slowly but surely, a transformation takes place inside of you that only God could bring about. This is how to be sure of God's call. It requires the trust to take a risk and take the first step. There may not be a voice or a revelation. There may not be a sign from heaven. But as the first step leads to others and God's work unfolds, a deep, confident peace resides in the soul, and you become the man who knows God's will.